And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of CCCA, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity tonight to have Annalisa join us. Not only is Annalisa an expert on water issues, she is a tireless advocate for protecting our aquifers and watersheds. Most of you already know her reputation, and know the good work she's doing. Her work for maintaining the environmental integrity of our region is another way it's been described, and it is very accurate. As an advisor to both governmental and private organizations, she's provided much needed guidance affecting healthy water resources for the entire South Central Texas region. Among the projects she's been involved with are several in Comal County, which is of interest to us. Two of them were the New Braunfels Technical Committee for Stormwater Planning, and another one was the New Braunfels Master Plan Committee for Water and Natural Resources. I didn't even know those committees existed, but thank you, Annalisa, for working on those. Y'all may not know, but Annalisa holds a Master of Science degree in Urban Administration from Trinity University. She has over 30 years of working in this field. For the past 17 years, she served as the Executive Director of the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, or GEAA as we all know it, which unites 52 separate organizations. I think when I first heard about GEAA, it wasn't anywhere near that, but 52 separate organizations in 21 counties. I think that's remarkable. Her guidance helps unify their efforts to protect the Edwards and Trinity Aquifer. Advising, advocating, and educating, Annalisa has been the go-to person and trusted source for many groups working to maintain a healthy water supply in our area despite the rapid growth. Annalisa is also one of the founders of CCCA. A lot of you may not know that. And she was instrumental in getting our group on its feet. She's now on our advisory board and continues to offer support and guidance whenever we ask. And we do ask often. We're very pleased to have her join us tonight. So Annalisa, take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a really nice introduction. Thank you. So let's see, just a second. I'll go to screen share. So everybody can see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to talk about the project is officially right now, I think, called the Honey Creek Ranch, and it's a municipal utility district. It's in the area, it's right in the city of Bulverde's extraterritorial jurisdiction. So you see they've cobbled together some different parcels here to build this subdivision. And then they've also sold or donated some of the parcels to the Comal Independent School District. So you see those here. So it's a large project. The Sewage and the Urbanchiks actually own all the land, except for what they've given for the Comal School District. So, you know, I'm with, as Elizabeth said, the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance. We actually have 53. We had a new member group join us recently, the Texas Cave Management Association. Yeah, thanks, Ellen. And so, yeah, it definitely keeps us busy, but I think during the time that GEAA's been around, we've actually accomplished quite a bit, but there's a lot more to go, as you'll see from this presentation. So you know, a little bit of background. In the fall of 2018, Sewage Properties applied for a permit to actually just discharge 500,000 gallons a day of treated sewage into an unnamed tributary that flows into Honey Creek, just upstream of the Honey Creek State Natural Area. And that is upstream of the Guadalupe River State Park, which is one of the most used water recreation areas in the state. It's one of the most popular. So the Guadalupe State Park, like I said, is immediately downstream of the confluence. And during average conditions, a substantial portion of the flow into the state park would have consisted of this nutrient-laden effluent, you know, of 500,000 gallons a day. And we really thought it would impact the recreational activities like fishing, swimming, canoeing, and all in the Guadalupe State Park. Also, Honey Creek State Natural Area is it's so protected that they don't even allow visitors to bring dogs there. So it's an incredibly special site. What's really awful about this whole case is that the most impacted landowners are the state of Texas because of the Honey Creek State Natural Area is contiguous and directly downstream from the proposed development. Yet in 2013, the state legislature passed legislation which prohibited any government agency from having standing in contesting a permit. So the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, which manages Honey Creek State Natural Area, was prohibited from contesting this permit. So that left it up to GEAA and to our partners in it, in this you know, protesting this. The Texas Parks and Wildlife has pretty much had to sit it out. The two watersheds in the Honey Creek State Natural Area are in the catchment area of Edwards Aquifer, about 25 miles north of San Antonio. The catchment area adjacent to the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone comprises the upper parts of the drainage basins of streams that lose water to the Edwards as the streams cross the recharge zone. The watersheds are drained by ephemeral first-order streams that are tributaries to Honey Creek, which is a tributary to the Guadalupe River. And that tributary, one of those tributaries described here is what they were going to discharge the sewage effluent into. So this was the original plan subdivision they had. It had a few more homes. I think it was 2,396, and they have knocked it down to 2,347. That's according to their permit application. It's still an incredibly dense subdivision for that kind of sensitive environmental area. So we have not, this is the only plan we've seen. They keep saying, no, that's not what we're going to do, but we haven't seen anything different. And if they get their permit, they will be able to put that 2,347 homes on 592 acres, which is really high density. So we have some issues with the sewage infrastructure in the Edwards Aquifer Watershed, and we have fought so many of these permits. On most of them, we've been able to negotiate settlements. On some of them, we've actually defeated the permits. On some of them, we had rulings for denying the permit, but the TCEQ overruled us and gave the permit anyway. So because the state imposed limits on impact fees, citizens and ratepayers often end up subsidizing infrastructure for the new development. Septic spacing regulations in Comal County require minimum lot size of 1 acre if it's served by a public water supply. And so we would look at, you know, if it was on septic, it would be 1 acre per house instead of 6 houses per acre, which is what it looks like for this subdivision. So centralized sewage infrastructure allows for much, much greater density. And that's where this wastewater treatment plant comes in and the whole wastewater permit. Adding more households in environmental sensitive areas can impact groundwater supplies and local wells. And one of the things that we typically get in negotiated settlements is for the operator of the wastewater treatment plant to pay for water quality monitoring for wells of contiguous landowners to make sure that those wells are not negatively impacted. Because in a karst area like the Edwards and the Trinity, or that water, anything that goes in stormwater or wastewater can communicate really rapidly over great distances. Adding more households in environmental sensitive areas is just not a good idea because it impacts groundwater supplies and local wells. In this case, particularly, we're really concerned about emerging contaminants in the sewage effluent, even though it's going to be land applied, the impact that it will have on aquatic wildlife, because we do know that there are aquatic species in the Honey Creek Cave. And then in this case as well, the receiving water body, Honey Creek itself, is extremely high quality. So, one of the things that's kind of not regulated are these what they call anthropogenic or emerging contaminants. And so what you're seeing on this slide is the Edwards Aquifer Authority has been monitoring at the springs. This is Waco Springs and Comal Springs on this chart. And these are some of the constituents that they're finding in these. Now, these are all below the level where they would be considered dangerous, but it's still very concerning. And, you know, dangerous for human consumption does not eliminate the fact that there might be very dangerous for the critters that rely on these ecosystems. So TCEQ also, we feel like, needs some help with oversight. According to the EPA, the permit approval process should be the most closely followed process in the following for wastewater treatment facilities. And the EPA had determined that 56% of major facilities in Texas were in significant non-compliance of their wastewater discharge permits for at least one quarter during the 15 months between January 2000 and March 2001. So this is fairly typical. Like in the city of San Antonio, the EPA actually came down on San Antonio water system because they were so often out of compliance with their wastewater permit. And so if a big one like San Antonio water systems can't keep it up, we get really concerned about these smaller wastewater treatment plants that go in subdivision by subdivision, because they are monitored much less frequently and scrupulously than a big one like San Antonio water systems would be. So here you see too, one of our concerns in this area in general, this is the area around Bulverde, and you can just see all these different wastewater treatment plants that are going in. And this is, you know, impacting, you know, the Edwards and Trinity groundwater supplies as well. So some of these are direct discharge permits, some of them are land application, but cumulatively, it's a lot of, you know, wastewater. Some is going to the sea below this direction, and some is going to the Guadalupe, but it's a whole lot of wastewater. And this is a little bit dated. There's actually been some new permits that we've worked on since this was done, but that's almost 1 million gallons per day. So I think it's thanks a lot to the you know, efforts of Texas Department of Parks and Wildlife. We had been raising a fuss, but I don't know that the developers were actually listening to us, but they did agree to convert that permit in December of 2019 from a direct discharge permit to what they call a TLAP. It's a Texas Land Application Permit. So we generally, you know, would find that a minor victory. We have had a lot of the negotiated settlements had the direct discharge, you know, converted into a land application. And that's because if you're applying that wastewater to the land, there's some chance for filtration before it reaches groundwater tables or the surface water. So it, you know, can be cleaned up, especially if the areas where they're distributing that wastewater are properly taken care of with the right plants, with some soil amendments and all. So we figure that's much safer. So like I said, normally we would have been happy with that, but in this case, our baseline water quality studies of Honey Creek indicate that it's probably one of the cleanest natural streams in the whole state of Texas. The water quality testing of the receiving water body conducted by GEAA and the Meta Center for Water and the Environment indicate that Honey Creek has extremely low phosphorus levels, which would be elevated, even we believe by land application. We hired a really top-notch engineer to review the land application permits, and we have some problems with that. We don't think that the area that they have to apply that effluent is sufficient to actually absorb it and all. We, and so we decided that we did need to go ahead and contest this land application permit. So we also feel that the risk of both wastewater and stormwater pollution from an extremely high density subdivision such as the Honey Creek Ranch is something that we should make every effort to mitigate. So like I said, it creates at least 3 major problems for stormwater runoff. And, it's like 100 acres of new impervious cover from the housing units, streets, sidewalks, and other non-permeable surface will increase the volume and velocity of water flowing into the creek, which could scour and permanently alter the riparian area. Additional nutrient inputs associated with fertilizing yards, pest weights, and other point and non-point source pollution of nutrient pollution in the stormwater runoff will deliver additional contaminants, including sediment, bacteria, oil and grease, trash, pesticides, and metals. So this is what we've seen when you put this kind of a high density development in, inevitably the water body that is directly downstream within a few years will be put on the state's list of impaired water bodies. And it would just be such a shame for that to happen to Honey Creek. Unfortunately, this permit that we're contesting does not cover these stormwater issues that we have. And we don't really have a good venue for that. But the amount of land that Honey Creek Ranch is setting aside for irrigation, as I mentioned, our engineer thinks is not sufficient to accommodate the full build out of the development. And then we've also seen where some of these subdivisions will apply for a land application permits, and then once they've built out what they are permitted for, they'll apply to amend the permit to a direct discharge so that they can build out on the acreage that was formerly set aside for land application. So we've seen that a number of times. And so that's a concern also with us for this permit application, because we're going to have to watch it in the future. And like I said, it's commonly happened, and we've had big fights, on converting these from land application to direct discharge permits. So, and also our engineer said that when waterlogged, the 84-acre land application field would actually ask mostly as impervious cover so that the water applied to it would just be running right off, the same as stormwater. So experts really fear that stormwater and effluent runoff and trash from Honey Creek Ranch will impact Honey Creek Cave, which is the longest known cave in Texas. It's got 20 miles of mat passageways, and it stretches under the Honey Creek Ranch sewer irrigation field. So because these karst terrains are so porous, there is a good probability that that water would be communicated into the cave itself. And then just a little note on caves and recharge features. Impervious cover limits would really be the best method of preserving these caves in our sensitive karst aquifers, the Edwards and Trinity for us. So, we would urge Comal County has a habitat conservation plan for the warbler, but none for the cave species. But typically what we're seeing is beautiful caves like this that are sealed over, sometimes filled in, because that's what the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality requires to keep contamination from entering the aquifer when you're going to put a new development, you know, over these caves. So where are we now? GEAA and the parties who have been recognized with standing, which is Bulverde Neighborhoods for Clean Water, GEAA, 5 landowners, and the Texas Cave Management Association, we have all been granted standing to contest this permit. We're scheduled to try to negotiate a settlement with Silesia, and we have, as I mentioned before, we tried to settle these because in the settlement agreement, we can get measures in, you know, the developers to agree to measures to mitigate some of the problems from stormwater and other issues, which really are not covered in a wastewater permit application. So for example, we might say you need to put your drainage outfall here because this contiguous landowner would be flooded, or we would say the well monitoring that you're required to pay to monitor the quality of these wells so we know that they're not being negatively impacted. And if they are, you would have to maybe pay for them to be hooked up to your centralized water supply, that kind of thing, to protect the landowners, but also to protect the land itself and the aquifer and the nearby surface water stream. So we typically put in, we identify recharge features and require that they be protected by buffer zones. So there's a lot of things that we can do in a negotiated settlement that really we can't do just by contesting the permit. So we really tried, we try hard to reach those type of settlements. So if they're able to address our concerns, on this case, we would really like for them to either reduce the density or to do some kind of cluster development that was offset by a whole lot more open space on the site. You know, we could withdraw from contesting the permit and consider this a win-win. You know, this is especially important too, because typically it's not going to be Silesia who develops this. They're going to flip this over to some builder. And so once we're dealing with those builders, which are national outfits, they are very resistant to doing anything that's really protective. They have their cookie cutter plans and that's just what they want to do. So, you know, if we have the opportunity to negotiate some mitigation measures in with the original owner of the land, that's very much preferable. And given that Ronnie Urbanchik is, you know, from this area, we would hope that he would be amenable to some additional protections that would, you know, preserve Honey Creek. So like I said, if negotiations are not successful, we will proceed with contesting the permit. It has to be, the contested case has to be over in this case by mid-May. So it's a pretty fast schedule. In the event that the permit is granted, if we have the resources, I would really like the option to appeal the permit. Now, I don't know if y'all heard, but Friends of Dry Comal Creek, which is one of our member groups, recently won their appeal of the Vulcan Quarry permit. So we're looking, this is not impossible. We feel that we have a really good case here. We've had our experts and our attorney and a lot of great volunteers have been working on this. So we feel like we will be able to present a really good case. So we're hoping that it's the shaking hands and not the boxing gloves. Now, you know, this is one thing that gives me pause though. Our folks out there had got these beautiful banners and signs all over the place, and then they all got stolen shortly after they were put up. Now those banners were expensive. So, you know, we're really, and those were on their property, not in the right of way. So we're just saying, you know, this doesn't look good for any kind of negotiation if they're pulling stunts like that. We've also, GEAA and others have already been threatened by lawsuits from Silesia. And so we anticipate we might have quite a fight on our hands. But like I said, we're confident that we can present a good case for denial of this permit. So like I said, we've been joined by TCMA, the Bulverde Neighborhoods for Clean Water, and several affected landowners. If you want to, we have a petition that's been signed by a whole lot of people, Save Honey Creek, which you can, if you just Google change.org and Save Honey Creek, it'll pop right up. We have a Facebook page for Save Honey Creek where people are sharing news, and we'll be putting updates on what's going on with the case. And then you can contribute to the legal fund, and you can mail it to us. Our address is on our website, or you can donate online. Just be sure and put Honey Creek so that we know the donation is for Honey Creek. So how can you help? Send money. I mean, basically, this process is very time consuming and expensive, and GEAA pays for our staff time, and we've had some excellent, volunteer experts on this, but still we have to pay some, like our engineer has to be paid, our attorney has to be paid, and also, and then we're working with the No Dumping Sewage. It's a collaborative of six different groups in Texas, and to really get a handle on better regulations for wastewater discharges, particularly in the Hill Country region. So during this legislative session, I think we're going to have 4 bills filed that will better regulate wastewater discharges in the Hill Country. And these are small tweaks. In the past, we have proposed just an out and out ban for direct discharges in the Edwards Aquifer contributing zone. They're already prohibited in the recharge zone, but we weren't able to get that. So we thought this session we would just do some tweaks, and I'll be keeping y'all posted on those. One of the bills that we're really happy about, it's already been filed, is a bill. It won't affect Honey Creek, but it's a bill that will allow Texas Department of Public Parks and Wildlife to have standing to contest cases where water discharges or water withdrawals, pumping, would impact their properties that they manage for the state of Texas. So I'm really hoping that will pass, and that was filed by Tracy King. So if y'all see Tracy King, tell him thank you. And he is the head of House Natural Resources, so I'm hoping that he'll move his own bill through that committee. So yeah, so if you want to go, you can go on our website, the GEAA website, and sign up for alerts, and you will get, whenever we send out, about this legislative alert of saying, oh, contact your legislator. And Biederman, it'd be great if as many of y'all can contact him about these bills and get his support, because he's one of the ones that the other legislators will look to, because they'll say, this is your turf, how do you feel about this? So we have a wastewater page that you can go to and learn more than you ever wanted to know about wastewater. It actually goes over 2 pages. So we have a long history of working in this arena. There's several films and all that you can share. And so if you have any other questions, we'll have time for questions right now, but if you have any other questions, here's my contact information. And it's pretty easy. Our domain is just aquiferalliance.org. Anything that was covered in here we'll have information on our website. So with that, let's open it up to questions.
It looks like, thanks, Annalisa. That was a great presentation. It looks like a very informative presentation. And I know that the website is also extremely informative and I use it regularly. So thanks. It looks like you've got 4 really good questions in the chat already. Are you able to see those?
Oh yeah, let me open up the chat. Okay. Oh, the TLAPs are made public actually online. Those permit applications are posted on the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality website. Occasionally the permit applications will be posted in publications, but it's difficult to determine which one. And I believe there is some legislation this session that's talking about permits being posted more publicly and uniformly. So we typically find out about those applications, direct discharge or TLAP applications, frankly, from the folks who live in the area, because like they will be concerned about a new subdivision going in. A minimum lot size that would be acceptable for such a, okay. So it says, has anyone calculated the minimum lot size that would be acceptable for a housing development on such a sensitive site? You know, the scientists say that, you know, in a recharge area like this, recharge and contributing in this area is kind of both, because it's for the Trinity and the Edwards are impacted by this, but they say that it should be between 15 to 8% impervious cover. So 15 to 8% is, I would say, at the very minimum would be at 1 house per acre. So yeah, where we have our impervious cover regulations for City of San Antonio, it's 15% in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and that comes out typically with a subdivision, because you've got your roads and everything, that will come out to no more than 3/4 of an acre.
I live in a 1 acre subdivision, and I think we're about 10% at 1 acre, but I would think that in such a sensitive area, it might need to be even bigger. Obviously, that would be the ideal, but we can't stop the development, but it should be forced to be, the density should be regulated by the sensitivity, right? And so such a sensitive area, these should be ranchettes.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's what's so frustrating, because I contacted, we work with developers, and there's some developments that have been really well done, you know, even on the recharge zone. And so I contacted the developers of some of those to say, what do y'all think about this? And they said, we think it's stupid, because why would he not, being right next to a natural area like that, and it's a beautiful piece of property. It was like, why wouldn't he just sell large acre lots and you know, he could totally make his money like that. And so we just don't really understand, but you know, we read, I guess in the Rivard report, Brendan Gibbons did an article that where he interviewed Ronnie Urbanchik, and he said he wanted affordable housing in Bulverde. Now we know that there is plenty of affordable housing going in Bulverde, because we've negotiated settlements with some of the developers of those. But then we said, well, you could do cluster developments, you know, on smaller lots or whatever. But we've given them a lot of different options, you know, that would be more protective, and they just have not seemed interested. So I don't know what's going on with that. I really don't. But yeah, it totally could be developed and make money for the developer. And one time, you know, there was one large development where we actually won. It was called the Hills of Castle Rock. We asked the developer, like, and because they had done a large lot subdivision, I said, didn't you make money on that? He was like, oh yeah, we made plenty of money on that, but we can make exponentially more doing this high density subdivision. Well, it turned out that they lost, so they ended up with the large lot subdivision now, and those are 15 acres per home. on
Can
that.
I ask one follow-up question, please?
Mhm.
So I noticed that the Comal Independent School District has a tract set aside for a school out there. And I attended a seminar in Hayes County. I think it was a One Water seminar where the school district there is bragging about this One Water school building system to protect the blue hole. And it seems like this would be a good opportunity to get CISD on board in designing a school like that here. If it
Yeah,
goes.
we've already been in touch with Comal Independent to broach that. And actually, some of the CCCA members were really helpful with that. And so we are trying to do that. And all new schools in Comal, not just these, to say, can you use this One Water model, which would be great. So thanks for bringing that up, because yeah, we would really like to see that happen. So I've got, let's see, another question here. If the development is built and Honey Creek is added to the list of Texas's impaired streams, what then? Is there a demand for remediation? Is remediation even possible? That's a really good question. I mean, when these streams get on the impaired list, then this is really kind of a scary way to do it, but Texas Commission for Environmental Quality has some grant money available for the federal government. So they will prioritize those impaired water bodies as getting the grant money, which is something, but our attitude has always been, why don't you do more to protect these streams so they don't end up on the impaired list in the first place? And we had applied for some of those funds to actually be more protective of some water bodies in Kendall County, and they told us, no, it's not impaired yet. And we waited until it got impaired, which actually was impaired by duck poop. But we were able to get the money once it was impaired. But it's the state has a kind of a funny attitude about that. And I think it has a little bit to do with the federal government's much more concerned about, keeping these water bodies clean than our state government is. Does that answer your question? Okay. So have all the bills found sponsors and been filed? The ones that I mentioned, I think 2 have been filed. I haven't gotten word on the other 3. I know that the one has been filed that I mentioned about the Texas Department of Parks and Wildlife being able to have standing and disputing these permits. And that one is House Bill 2716. The other ones I don't have numbers for yet. So I'll be putting out an alert, and I can certainly send that over to Elizabeth to share with y'all too, or you can sign up for the GEAA alerts and get it. And if you have any ideas about sponsors, please let me know, because we like to get as much support from the legislators as we can on this. I believe Representative Weiner was going to file some of these, but it'd be great to get Biederman on board. And it'd be wonderful if we could get Donna Campbell to file a Senate version. I'd be over the moon. So I've got another question here. I've heard Silesia agreed to reduce the number of houses to about 1,600. Is that correct? And has it shown up in the permit processing any way that would be binding? No, absolutely not. I mean, they might be planning to do 1,600 homes, but their permit application says 23, 43 or something like that. So, I mean, we go by what it says in their permit application, because what they say, I've seen nothing in writing. I've heard them say that, but I mean, that means nothing. I mean, unless they were to amend the permit application to say it's going to be 1,600 homes. Then I would say, oh, y'all are great. That's wonderful. But so far we haven't heard anything that would be legally binding as to that claim of 1,600 homes. So could you elaborate on how citizens wind up subsidizing infrastructure for new developments? Yeah, I certainly can. You know, typically, and because it's not required on under state law, these new high density subdivisions in rural areas become a huge burden to the counties where they're located, because inevitably traffic increases. So typically the counties end up having to widen roads, having to put new roads in. So, you know, traffic is a big one, in transportation. Flooding is huge. And so what we're seeing often is that these subdivisions are built out. They don't have adequate drainage plans, or their drainage plans are the type of infrastructure where it's like channelized. And so what it'll do is really increase the velocity and the volume of that water, stormwater that's hitting downstream areas. So it causes flooding, it causes damage to the riparian areas, because when the water hits it that fast, if it's a natural area, it'll get scoured out. And so you have increased flooding and a really damaged riparian area. So typically the counties are having to, because in other states, they have impact fees. Texas impact fees are really, really limited by the state on what they're allowed to charge for. And they typically, the amount that they're allowed to charge does not cover the impacts that for those local governments for, you know, adding that many new people and new homes in an area. So there's just a whole bunch of ways that they end up subsidizing, you know, new development, but really the traffic and the flooding are two big ones. And then water quality as well. And then of course, it's also, we've seen the schools, that because people's school taxes will start going way up. And we've seen, like several years ago in Bernie, where a new school was built because Bernie was growing so quickly. New schools had to be built. They were all built where the new subdivisions were, and the people who'd lived there all along saw their school taxes just increase you know, astronomically, while their kids were still going to the same old schools that they'd been going to forever. So they ended up having to pay for all those nice new schools that their kids didn't even get to go to. So there's a whole number of things like that. Parklands, typically, these kind of developments are not required to have parks or open space set asides for recreation. And so the county or the nearby city will have to increase their spending for parks to accommodate. So there's just a whole number of ways where the public ends up subsidizing these developments, because the regulations, and actually what the counties themselves are allowed to do if these developments occur in areas that aren't within a home rule municipality. It's pretty restrictive. So yeah, the counties end up picking up the tabs, or the school district, or whatever district they're paying to. Let's see. I'm taking these in order. Can endangered species in Honey Creek K be used to lower the development density? And that's going to be part of our case for the contested case hearing. That's part of the evidence that we will be presenting. So we hope that the judge finds that reasonable, because we certainly believe it's a very legitimate concern. I believe I heard that the Lake Travis area requires sewage discharge to be treated to potable quality. If this is so, could the Canyon Lake area work to do the same? Yeah, and you know, when we had, that's a good question, because when we had our prohibition on discharge permits within the Edwards Aquifer contributing zone, because we know that a lot of that water goes into recharge the Edwards. some of the legislators were like, well, can't you just increase the standards for treated wastewater effluent to where it meets drinking water standards? I know some geologists had a little bit of heartburn with that, but frankly, that would be such an enormous improvement over what we have now. With Canyon Lake, I think we would be willing to help you with any efforts to get better wastewater treatment regimes in the discharge permits that go into Canyon Lake. We have in the past, when some of these treatment plants were up for renewal, GEAA has gone in there. We used to partner with Friends of Canyon Lake, but I don't know that that group exists anymore. But we would go in and get the permit, and we were very successful in getting TCEQ to say, hey, you guys need to fix this, that, or the other that's wrong with your wastewater treatment plant before we're gonna approve your permit again, or you maybe need some higher standards. But it is a concern in Canyon Lake because you have so much wastewater discharge going into that lake now. And in times of drought where lake levels are low, it's got to be having an impact. So like I said, GEAA would be willing to work with anybody who's interested on that. The trick would be to try to track when those permitted plants are up for renewal, because that's your best chance to catch it. Is there any move at the legislature to give counties more control over growth? And that's something we've been trying to do for the counties within the Hill Country region, because we're growing so quickly ever since I've been with GEAA. So that's like for 17 years, we've been trying to do that. We had one really good bill that was for 9 counties in the Hill Country area. I believe that was maybe in 2009. All the counties were supporting it. It got close, but it didn't make it through. And this is something that we had said this legislative session, because of COVID and the redistricting and certain issues, we didn't want to take on a lot of heavy lifts. But this is something we'd definitely be interested in working on in future legislative sessions. And we do have the template, and I think some favorable. There are now, Kendall County is actually filing some of their own bills to give them a little more authority for development within their area. And we're going to be strongly supportive of those. So I'm hoping that if those get passed, they could be something that other counties within our area could either file on their own, or we could do another one where it was like 9 counties or something. But my hat's off to Kendall County for taking that initiative on their own. Let's see. Do you have examples of developments that GEAA or others have negotiated that ended up playing out exactly as you predict, with it impaired streams, wells, springs, etc.? Well, typically not that we've negotiated. We really tried to put in things that are more protective on the settlements that we've negotiated. So we haven't really seen the wells and streams impaired in those. Now we've seen that in plenty of other developments. We did actually last year, we sued Forest Ranch, which is out in Bulverde, because they violated the negotiated settlement that they had with us on 2 counts. And so we not only won a big cash settlement from them, $175,000, which a lot of it went to mitigate the damage that they did by violating their settlement agreement. But they had to repair the damage that they did. So that's one of the good things about a settlement agreement. If they violate this permit agreement, we have to, if they violate the terms of their permit, the TCEQ issues, we have to rely on TCEQ to be the enforcers. But with these settlement agreements, we can actually hire a lawyer and we're the enforcers. So that's a much better scenario.
Yeah, Annalisa, let me chime in and say that the question was not coming from a position of questioning the validity of the settlement agreements, because I'm one of your hugest fans, as I think you know, in the work that you do, working with developers and so on. It was more from the standpoint, if there's a really hotly contested project like this one at Honey Creek, that we know almost any amount of development is going to have some kind of an impact on such a sensitive area. If we had examples of others where developers agreed to do a certain number of things to protect water quality, and then they got their permit and they got to build, and sure enough, all the things that people said were going to happen if you do this, and then it happened. Those kind of examples would be nice to be able to hold up as examples of why any of these really sensitive areas like this one, they shouldn't have anything on there, you know, ideally.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea, Helen, and I think it would be, we wouldn't have to look too far to find those examples, so I'll try to do that, you know, and if y'all have any, let me know.
Yeah.
So I think the last question we have is issue with the plan on 337, neighborhood lost the suit against City of New Braunfels. However, in the end, wanted them to increase the quality of the treated water, but they refused. They said it was good enough. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is whoever posted this could elaborate?
Yeah, this was a while back. Sorry, I have a kid screaming in the background. And I was in one of the neighborhoods. It was directly affected downstream, and it was when they were proposing that water treatment plant on the loop, kind of west of Common. And and you know, it was kind of back and forth with a lawsuit with the city. I guess it was more so with MBU, and the suit was lost. And then we kind of went back and said, can you just increase it to the most amount of, you know, the highest quality treatment that you can do, because that area that goes through the neighborhood on Rivercrest Heights is when the drought is full on. I mean, it's really, really low. And so you're having a huge amount of water coming through there, and it's all treated water.
Oh, yeah. And that's a really typical problem, is that a lot of these discharge permits are going into ephemeral streams where during the summer they're dry. And so all the water that you have is discharge water. And man, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I'm especially sorry if it was.
I mean, it's the Guadalupe, and so I mean that's all tubing, right? People are basically tubing in all effluent. You know, at some points when they're really low. So
yeah,
unfortunate they lost and they refused to increase it. You know, at least the quality wise, but still, I mean, oh well, it's just.
Well, and it's one of those things where, like I said, they'll be up for renewal because those permits are not indefinite. So maybe we can try to help address that when they're up for renewal. And Helen's point of like, what have been the impacts on that since they got their permit. We didn't have baseline, of course. In this case, we always try to get baseline water quality monitoring so that we can say what the impacts are. But still, yeah, if you know, please keep my contact information, and you know, we could talk, or if it's New Braunfels Utilities, you know, I think they've got a new director and everything, and so they seem to really be upping their game. So it might be something that could be worked out with them directly, if not, you know, waiting to protest the renewal of their permit.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think there's like 5 levels of water treatment, and they went to a 4, but they chose not to go to 5. So I didn't even know that comes under review again. So I don't know if it was the way the facility is built, or if it's, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, and I think with NBU, like I said, they seem to have upped their game. And so it might be worthwhile just going to them and saying, is there anything that y'all can do to improve the treatment standards on this? Or sometimes what we've seen is you can do other measures rather than just the treatment plant. For example, you could do an artificial wetland if there's enough room where they're discharging. That will really clean up that water a lot before it's released into the water body. So there are different remedies, you know, and they perhaps could even get funding for that type of project. So
It goes direct. I mean, it directly goes into right out there by the loop on kind of on the north side near Rockin' R, right?
oh, right.
I mean, it goes directly into the Guadalupe.
Yeah, you certainly don't. Yeah, I get your point there. So yeah, if you get any news on that, please keep me informed. And said we sometimes, you know, even though it's already happening, can find, you know, remedies.
Thank you.
So it looks like, yeah, it looks like that's all the questions we have. I really appreciate these questions, and y'all seem to have a really good grasp of this. So we need all the help we can get on this. And this Honey Creek one, frankly, is the most concerning one that I've seen. For the past, since 2018, I've been having such heartburn about this one because there's just so much at stake. And really, to be frank, you know, in any kind of fight like this, the deck is stacked against us, and these guys seem to be determined to have their own way. So yeah, we need all the help we can get on this one.
Yeah. Is there any statewide publicity that could be sought after, like a Texas Monthly story or something?
I've sent them, you know, Texas Standard, Texas Monthly, you know, I've sent them about this one and about other ones, and they're kind of like, oh, that's too local. They don't really consider it statewide because it's local to our area. So I haven't had much luck, but if anybody has any contacts, I think it's a great story, especially, you know, because so many people are flocking to the Hill Country, and y'all know, I mean, there's always issues, you know.
Yeah.
Alan?
I just wanted to say that we fought them around Bracken Bat Cave and we won. And I think that it might be possible to win this one as well.
That'd be wonderful. I mean, Bracken was like a great example. You know, what happened with that was there was going to be a high density subdivision going in next to what is the largest colony of mammals in the world. And so we got with Bat Conservation International immediately. But in that case also, we had Ron Nirenberg, the San Antonio mayor, really helped out on that one a lot. And we were able to cobble together and spend a lot of City of San Antonio's Edwards Aquifer protection money on getting that property. I don't know that we don't have any local government champion in this case, which I wish we did. And we certainly, Comal, you know, wouldn't even put in money for Bracken, even though that was in their own county. They said, no, we don't have any money to put towards that. So that's one of the things we're hoping that Comal County Conservation Alliance will be doing, is getting these guys to loosen up the pocketbook for stuff like this. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Alan, because it is a little ray of hope that, you know, it can be done. And we do know that a lot of people would like to see that site preserved permanently, you know, as is the case with the Bracken Bat Cave. I mean, that to me would be the best outcome of all. So put that in your prayers.
Is there any chance the developer is driving up the density to drive up the price, knowing that it's so sensitive and such a state treasure that, You know, they don't really think they're going to get away with developing it. That's what happened.
I
with Open Cave.
They do. Because I mean, under the laws, you know, they can do that, you know, so I don't know. I mean, that I'm not saying that that's not possible, but if they're driving up the price for who has the money to pay that?
Well, I didn't mind so much. They might have been doing that at Bracken Cave, because in that case you had, you know, a number of entities. It's one of those great examples of multi-agencies coming together, just like with Government Canyon as well, to do these really great projects that form a nugget and then they grow out like Bracken Cave. We've got Guadalupe River State Park. We got the natural area. We just need to keep adding on so that that can be a conservation hub as well.
It'd be wonderful. And the site is actually a beautiful site. And to get that many homes in, they're going to have to do a lot of cut and fill,
And there's
you know,
no
to level that site out, which is really pretty heartbreaking because it is a beautiful site and it's got some nice, not huge elevations, but it's nice.
yeah.
See, or even if we could just find somebody like, you know, Elon Musk moved here, just buy it. It's next to a natural area. You like it.
Is anybody called Matthew McConaughey?
I don't
Anybody
have
know
his
him?
phone number.
He's actually been talked to by some of the Great Springs folks.
Yeah, so
think
any ideas are really appreciated, you know.
Yeah.
Jack?
Well, Annalisa, you helped our group get formed, and we just recently had a big win against TCEQ, and that's not the only one. That same judge ruled against TCEQ in Dripping Springs. So I think we have TCEQ a bit on the defensive. So I don't think we should give up too easily on this one, because if we can't predict this piece of property, we might as well just give up and go home.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been having heartburn, but that's not to say that I'm hopeless. You know, I'm just that this one really weighs heavy on us. But no, your point is really well taken. And that's why I said, like, I want to get a war chest to where we can appeal this thing if it is granted. But I think the Dripping Springs case that you brought up was a huge win, and the Vulcan, oh my God, my hat's off to y'all. So that was like made me so happy when I saw that. Yeah, like I said, they won in the appeal, and so and that judge in the Vulcan case was amazing, you know. So I'm not hopeless by any means, you know.
Well, that's a great note to end on. A happy note, full of optimism, full of can-do spirit. We're all going to keep trying. And Annalisa, your website, say your website once for us.
Yeah, it's aquiferalliance.org, O-R-G.
And getting on the website, will give you an email access for Annalisa. It's too much to put on the screen right now. But thank you, Annalisa, for coming and sharing all this with us. I think we all understand it a great deal better.
Yeah.
And thank you all for being here to learn more. It's going to take a village, and we're the village. So I appreciate y'all for being here and hope to see you next time.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm so happy.